So modern life has engineered health out of your days, and most of us didn't even see it happening. So you're tired, you're carrying weight that won't budge, your sleep is off, your stress is constant, and you've been told to eat better, move more, manage your stress. Like those are three separate things on a checklist. You know what? They're really not. And this morning, I want to tell you why. I'm going to walk you through three things that are quietly ruining your health, running your health into the ground. And at the end, I'm going to give you five reframes that you can start today. They're not going to be tips, they're actual reframes that will change how you think about your health and maybe give you a new perspective, the kind of change that will actually make a difference in the long run. So stay with me till the end. So, if we haven't met, I'm Dr. Jenn. I help women and families reverse insulin resistance and metabolic disease using what I like to call joyful medicine. It's where evidence based lifestyle medicine meets joy, weight inclusivity, and it honors your food, your culture, and your lived experience. So, last week I was at an amazing conference. It's called Power of the Plate. And I came home with three things that I haven't been able to stop thinking about. And really, they're things that have been mulling around in my mind, but it all became really clear at this conference. So, this conference gathers clinicians, uh, community activists, people that are concerned about the environment, and it brings it all together because you know what? These things are all connected. And the beauty of this conference is we were all there together to really grow and share, and actually spoke on women in midlife and how we can amplify that transition and make it more meaningful and really more impactful for our long-term health. And I was really excited to share that. But that's not what I'm talking about today. There's some things that I have been underplaying in my own content here. I talk about lifestyle all the time and I give tips. If you're on my channel, I have several great playlists there about reversing insulin resistance, about thriving in midlife and other things along that way. But there's some underlying principles that I follow in my own life and that I always have in the back of my mind. And I don't think I share them enough. And so some of it is what I'll talk to you about today. So my first takeaway is stress is really upstream of everything. And this is one realization that I have been thinking about a lot more lately. When I first became plant-based, when I first became a lifestyle medicine physician, I was really focused on the nutrition aspect because I was blown away that this powerful tool that we have is not taught enough in medical schools. And it's really something that we're taught the wrong parameters about. Like it really is powerful. It's something that number one should be enjoyable because we have taste buds for a reason, we have five senses for a reason, but it's also something that can be truly healing. And it both they're not exclusive, right? They can both be together at the same time. And so that is one thing that I used to always focus on. But you know what? Stress is one of the pillars, or mindfulness is one of the pillars of lifestyle medicine. And while I mention it before, I didn't really think about the implications of it. And several things lately have me thinking about it. The study that showed that Black women live shorter lives because of stress. And then when I started doing my research for my topic, talking about menopause and perimenopause and how stress is amplified during this stage. And then looking at what happens in this stage and all of the potential consequences, sequelae that we will deal with if we don't thrive during this stage. They're all related to stress. Stress is an underlying amplifier. And this is really, really important. One of the speakers that really brought it home for me was Dr. Columbus Batiste. He's a cardiologist, he's the healthy heart doc. And he talked about a case where a woman that didn't have any of the typical risk factors actually had a heart attack. And her risk factor was stress. And that really is mind blowing, right? That something that we just kind of push aside and we kind of, especially as women, we're always pushing through. Modern society, you know, celebrates when people push harder, right? Companies celebrate when we push harder. They want us to be more productive, but this has a real toll on our health, especially as a healthcare worker. When I look at the sacrifice that a lot of us go through, every aspect of healthcare depends on our sacrifice, depends on us giving more because it knows that we people that go into healthcare are more likely to be givers, and it knows that we're going to work harder hours. We're going to skip, our breaks. We're going to not drink water. And this takes a toll. This is real serious stress. And it's not a separate factor from all the other lifestyle things. It's not separate from eating, moving, sleeping well. Stress is literally the foundation because if stress is not controlled, all of the other things number one, are harder to maintain, but also none of the other things work well. You can eat perfectly well and have no risk factors and have a heart attack like this woman. You can have it increases your risk of dementia. It increases your risk of visceral fat accumulation, which leads to things like insulin resistance and diabetes eventually. So it really has a toll. So the thing is, I I cannot impress upon you enough that stress is something to take seriously. Cortisol, insulin resistance, cravings, sleep, visceral fat, these are all downstream of our nervous system and how we feel. And that's that connection between mind and body that, early in my career as an ICU doctor, I didn't think that that connection was as important. And a lot of medicine doesn't connect those two. We talk about eat less, move more. We're not thinking about how we're feeling. And that's really important. So that's one thing. But I want to tell you what there's a takeaway that I've been underplaying, and I'm going to talk about that, at the end. But let's talk about um, the plants. So I always talk about plants as being foundational, and in when we talk about health, and it is really the truth. What we eat can make a huge difference, and when we eat more plants, more nutrient dense foods, it literally helps reverse disease. The nutrient dense foods, when we talk about plant foods, they support our gut health, they support our heart health, they lower cholesterol, they improve our insulin sensitivity, so lower our risk of diabetes, they improve our brain health, so lower our risk of Alzheimer's and dementia. And so these really are healing. But the thing that I haven't been talking about enough is that animal foods are harmful. They do take a toll, not only on our physical health, but they have a toll on the health of the planet. And that is one of the reasons why I went plant-based. It was the reason I went plant-based initially, is because I was concerned about the environmental impact of animal, factory farming on the planet. And just in general, the abuse that goes on and the to our land, to our planet, but also to the animals. And I don't talk about it enough because we're all connected, right? The health of our planet is our health. And so we have to really look at this whole picture when we look at ourselves. That pollution has a direct effect on us. The antibiotic use that's in those animals has a direct effect on us. It leads to more antibiotic resistance. And then for our overall health, when we consume an animal heavy diet, as most Americans do, it affects our gut health. And our gut health drives, I talk to kids every day about how our gut health really controls so much. It affects our metabolism, so increasing our risk of type 2 diabetes. It can directly affect our heart health by increasing inflammation that directly damages our blood vessels. So it really does take a toll. So it's not just to eat more plants, it really is to limit animal foods. And so I have to say that I'm going to start talking about that a little bit more, drawing those connections, because I think in modern life, it's easy to forget the connections or to not see the connections. You literally can go through life without ever making the connection between the cow that you drive by, the slaughter, and what ends up on your plate. And not only that, the effect that it has on your health, that when you go to the doctor, maybe you have an infection, they have to use a stronger antibiotic because we have more antibiotic resistance. These things are all connected. When you look at the pollution in the air, when you look at the warming of our planet, we had a little 85-degree day last week here in Vermont, and now we have 40-degree day today. That's not normal. This 50-degree shift in weather is not normal, and it's directly related to our impact on the planet. So I have to talk about that. I'm going to talk about it more. And then the last takeaway is this one, which I think is really important, and I want you to think about, is modern convenience. Our modern conveniences are amazing. We have technology for everything. We have, Uber Eats, we have Amazon that can deliver in a second. We literally don't ever have to leave our house to go to the office anymore. I can reach a million people. I can reach people around the world just by talking here on my computer. But you know what? These things have a toll on our health as well. It is literally engineering the health out of our lives. So when you think about it, I'll give one example. We just talked about food. I'll talk about food some more. So when we look at ultra processed foods, so ultra processed foods are bad for many reasons, but one of the reasons is it takes the fiber out, right? That work to chew. is literally removed because it makes it smoother, it makes it easier to go down, easier to digest. Now, I will say that digestion actually that easier to digest is actually not true in the long run, right? Because our microbiome thrives on that fiber that we're not getting. And so it actually is taking a direct toll on our health there. Many other ways as well. Think about cars. Think about all the things that, and when you look at the areas around the world where people are still thriving and vital, they do a lot more walking, they do a lot more public transportation, they do a lot more physical activity, physical labor. Their life requires movement and activity and action. So this really, really has a toll. I was even thinking about it this week. I needed a little more coffee. No, actually, I had to go to the post office, and I was like, oh, I could just drive down the street and go to the post office. I need to get it done fast and come back and finish what I have to do in the office. But then I thought about it. I'm like, yeah, so maybe it's a 20-minute walk. That 20-minute walk can be so powerful for so many reasons, right? It's moving my legs, it's getting me up moving, but it's also getting me outside in nature, which is beneficial, which is another thing I don't talk about enough, but that's another talk for another day. It is letting me connect with my neighbors. I walk by houses, say hello to people. There's so many benefits that we engineer that we're missing out on by modern life. And I have to talk about plastic. So we talk about that ease of buying things. Plastic is everywhere. So one thing to think about is the plastic that is everywhere. I'll give you an example. My refrigerator, that I had to buy a new refrigerator because it didn't last. So a new refrigerator in less than 5 years. The shelves are plastic. So literally, I cook all the time. I bring things into the things, and the shelves crack because they're made of plastic. I think when I grew up, the shelves were metal, the brackets were metal. So that's one thing that obviously I can't control. But there are things that you control. When you go shopping in the grocery store, you can look for things that are in glass instead of in plastic, or in aluminum instead of in plastic. When you buy things, you can think about things that what they're made in, what they're packaged in, what they're shipped in. And I know that's a lot, but it's just another thing to think about. The other thing is productivity. Productivity is not really made for us, right? We are not machines. We don't need to be more productive. That productivity, again, acts on that stress. And it really makes us think that we never have enough time, which makes us use more of these conveniences, which makes us more sedentary, which makes us not chew our food, which all of these things are lined up, right? So convenience is beneficial, but it's just something to push back on, and that maybe it is quietly making you lose years of life, in ways that you don't think of on a regular basis. So part of my practice is, the slow down, bringing joy back, really bringing that savoring that slow down and being more present. And that really is something that I help my patients with, and something that I'm going to be talking more about as we go forward. So I said I would give you 5 reframes that you can start today. So let's talk about it. So these are 5 things that if you start thinking about them a little bit differently, then you can start to move the needle forward for your health for the long term. So the first one is treat stress like a clinical problem. It's not a personality trait. It is your nervous system literally is driving your blood sugar, your cravings, your blood pressure, your heart health, your visceral fat, all of these things, your sleep. So it's not separate from your physical health. It literally is your physical health. So start thinking about how you can engineer downshifts into your day. Think about where you can put those pauses in, because they have real physiologic effects. They do stimulate your parasympathetic system. That little deep breath can make a world of difference. That few steps outside in the fresh air can also make a difference. So think about stress again is not extra. It's not a personality problem. It is something that you are literally doing for your health. It's not a luxury. Mindfulness is not a luxury. The second one is make plants the main event, not the side. So just shift your framing. When you're making dinner, think about what plants am I going to have? What's in season? What's growing? What can I make that's a little different, that's plant forward? And put the meat to the side, put the fish to the side, put the dairy to the side, put all of those animal foods to the side, and make plants the center. Make sure you're seeing a rainbow as well. And that's another powerful shift. Again, it's going to help support your heart health, your brain health, your gut health, and it's going to make a step towards improving the health of the planet. That third one is eat fewer animal planets for you and for the planet. So plant in animal products, sorry. So just think about, where maybe I don't need to have, meat. Maybe I can add beans instead of meat. Maybe I don't need the cheese. Just start to think a little bit differently. Maybe I can have plant milk instead of dairy, and just start to think about some of those things and don't make them so automatic. Think of, when you go grocery shopping, what plant things can I add and replace with the meat? Because this really not only is hard on our bodies, but again, is hard on the earth. And this really comes back to us. Fourth one is audit your conveniences. Think about over the course of the week, look at a week, just kind of audit, where can I actually engineer movement back into my life? Where can I take away a convenience? Maybe I don't order from Amazon anymore. I got rid of Amazon. You know what? That first few months was a little tough, but you know what? I don't miss it anymore. I go to my local store. I actually seek out smaller makers. And I just think about that more. It's just that extra thought process. Again, it's another mindful activity using your brain to kind of, think about different ways to obtain products and maybe a little bit less expensive and supporting your local area as well. Maybe taking the elevator instead of the stairs. So again, look at those modern conveniences and see where you can make a difference. And the other one is choose the slower thing on purpose, choose to cook instead of eat out. Maybe prep your veggies and your beans beforehand so that you have some of those made up and you can make a few meals. Maybe you choose to ride your bicycle to the store instead of drive your car. Maybe you decide to take public transportation instead of driving one day. That is another thing. So just think about it, not to put pressure on, but just to look at it a little bit differently. So I encourage you to take one of those five things, whether it is focusing on stress, which again, I think that's number one, making plants the mainstay of your meal, eating fewer animal foods, auditing your conveniences, choosing the slower pace, the slower path. One of those five things, just choose one. If you have a different one, comment below. I would love to hear from you. I'm here every Friday morning at 9 a.m. Joyful Medicine with Dr. Jenn. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.